Well, hello 7th grade teachers and welcome to the final video in the training series. This one is looking at an example lesson plan, and actually I'll be showcasing the new KCPS science example lesson plan and then showing you a completed example lesson plan for you guys to help you with your planning. Now, I'm just going to be showing one today, but I actually have 4 created for you guys, 1 per quarter. So that way you can kind of get some ideas throughout the whole year about how I envision teachers using our resources for lessons. These are lessons that you could take and use exactly as they are, tweak them to kind of fit your style, or just get a few ideas from them and build your own. So I just want to quickly show you that you can find these up here. I do have some other lesson plans that I've written in years past based off different initiatives that were going on. But you can find the new highlighted example lesson plan here. I also want to make sure that as you start teaching, you didn't forget about it. So since this is a week 5 example lesson plan, if you scroll down to week 5, you'll notice that there is also a link to the lesson plan over here as a reminder that it's there. So with that being said, I actually want to start by showing you guys the new template so that way you understand what that looks like, and then we'll jump into my written example lesson plan. So within our template, you have sort of your starting planning materials up at the top. So what are my standards I'm covering for this week? What's the chapter or concept? What's my name, grade, and dates? So I'll show you guys how I filled those out. And then your main planning comes down starting here. Block schedule is sort of, you have A day, B day, so it's a Monday, Tuesday. If you'd rather put A day, B day, or however you want to change these are totally changeable. Maybe because as you can see, like this carries over, so the next week you have Monday's lesson done, so then maybe the next lesson plan you start off with Tuesday, Wednesday, so you can adjust those as needed. Your objectives for the day, and then every day, what is your do now? How are you opening these? This activity should only really be 5 to 10 minutes just to get the lesson started, but this sort of sets the pattern for the other activities. You'll notice that you have the do now, activity 1, activity 2, and activity 3. And the reason I have 3 listed as I want you to, when you have block scheduling, to think about multiple activities throughout the lesson. Otherwise, if you're trying to do one thing for the whole class period, that's going to be a very long activity and you're going to lose student engagement. So how can you break things up so that way you're doing small things with your students throughout the lesson? So you can write out what your do now question is or what activity. The cognitive lift, that is who is doing the actual thinking in this process. For most do nows, that's actually just going to be students because you're kind of like letting them answer on their own. But during your lesson, you want this to be a kind of a mix between sometimes it's the teacher and the students are just taking in information. Sometimes it is a mix where the teacher's sort of prompting and guiding students through a lesson, but some of the thinking is done by both parties. And then sometimes you'll have students are solely the ones doing all of the thinking and working. So I want to have this part of here so that way as you're planning your lesson, if you find that it's all teacher, 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 you're not including your students enough, or students, you're not engaged in the lesson enough. So just kind of help you process through who's doing the cognitive lifts there. And then just some other material here. So like what materials you're going to need for this part of the lesson, this activity. How much time is this going to take, and then how are you going to transition from this activity to the next. And I've always tried to include at least one during a lesson. Typically down here, one of those transitions should be a brain break, because with the 80 minutes or however long it is, it's a long time, so trying to include brain breaks in is helpful. As you come down to the bottom, so you've done your activity, how are you going to close your lesson? Maybe you do exit tickets, some sort of quiz, maybe just re-asking the do now question. Now the students have learned something. So whatever it is, how are you going to close this out to make sure that you've assessed student learning for the day? Any modifications or scaffolding that is required based off your student population. And then finally, a reflection feedback. How did this lesson go? Make some notes for yourself, so if you utilize this next year, you've got those there for you. I also have this writing prompt graphic. It's really small, so this will actually link to the actual page there. And the last resource available to you guys, I sent you all this laminated and stuff like that, but this is that planning guide wheel if you need a new one or want to tweak it and edit and make it your own. All right, so that is the blank template. You kind of get the structure, which makes it easier when we transition to here is my example lesson plan. You can see how I've filled out the top, just kind of like the standard stuff up the top. I list out my objective for the day. These I just pull from the curriculum map based off of what I've decided to do for that lesson. I do my do now. In this case, we're filling out a KWL chart with sticky notes. So that means that in my materials, I'm making a note, hey, make sure that I have my sticky notes. This one is going to take us 7 minutes, so that's falling between that 5 and 10. So do nows I like between 5 and 10 minutes, whereas the actual activities typically range between 15 to 30. Sometimes if you've got a lab, I've hit 35 a few times, like here you go, 35 minutes. I don't think I've ever planned something longer than 30. Oh, I lied. Here's 40 minutes. But I think this is a hands-on lab. I typically don't get up that high. You're trying to stay within that 15, 25 sort of range, sometimes 30, to kind of keep the students engaged the whole time. And you'll notice that after my 30-minute, my 40-minute, I'm putting in a brain break because that's a long time for students to stay focused in on. Another thing to notice is here I'm using one of the activities from Discovery Ed. The way I've written my lesson plans, just that it's useful for teachers, admin, and coaches, is that all of these links are actually PDFs or images, so you don't have to have Discovery Ed access. Everybody can just see what it is that I'm referencing, and then be able to understand what's going on in the lesson. So those make it very easy for other people to view, you guys to view for what's going on. And then I also include, so I'm going to do some Discovery Ed, but I'm going to implement a Nearpod. Let's see here, it could be a video or a lesson activity. Blending that Nearpod in, and then doing some more Discovery Ed. But you notice that Nearpod is kind of breaking it up, so it doesn't feel like my day is just, we're going from Discovery Ed activity to Discovery Ed activity to Discovery. Like, I want to break it up. So I'm using those Nearpods and gizmos and videos to kind of mix up the lesson. So really encourage you guys doing that. And then you finish it off with this third activity. Again, thinking through all the steps. One cool thing about Discovery Ed is if you're using the teacher's manual, either the physical copy or online, they give you lots of good strategies for how to do the activity in an engaging way and not just, hey, open your book and work on it. So try to follow those or come up with your own ways to make it more engaging. So that way you're controlling the flow of the lesson and not just it's a student work period. So look for those, and I describe it in my kind of descriptions. I kind of write that out, what the strategy is that I'm using. And sometimes I'll link to it. Let me see if I got any here. If they have, not in this one, but sometimes they have SOS strategies, and I will link to those in my lesson plan so that way you guys can see the strategy that I'm using, just not in this week. And then you can see each day I have some form of closing. Sometimes I'll even use the Nearpod as a closer, because those activities can do those drag and matches, which are useful for kind of assessing student learning. So sometimes I might utilize those, or just a question. Things like that. And then you'll also see for each lesson plan, I kind of have a reflection on what I was going for, what I wanted to show you guys in that lesson plan. So feel free to read those so you can kind of get my vision for why I wrote each lesson plan. I tried, since I did 4 for you guys, each one kind of highlights different components of our resources to help you kind of better utilize what we have available. So there you can kind of see that's an example of a fully written out lesson plan. I'll quickly share like when I'm planning. So this is week 5. I'm coming down here, I'm looking at the various activities that are available to me. I'm looking at the different, I want to look at the labs that are coming up. What gizmos do I have? What are the Nearpods that are available? And then using all those resources. I like to have an actual book open, the teacher's book, as I look through the activities, and then I'm kind of coming up with each lesson as I'm pulling all this information together. So that's kind of how I utilize all the stuff. And I find it writing the lesson plans, sometimes they take a little long, but it's never like difficult. I'm able to pull it all together. So that's really all I wanted to show you guys. Feel free to do this lesson as is, tweak it, make it your own, or just steal some ideas. I'm sure you guys will have even better lessons than what I have. All right, good luck. Bye.